Dale Beaumont and welcome to Get Published TV. This is the only dedicated show on the internet to help authors and aspiring authors to write, publish and market their own best-selling book in 8 minutes a day or less. Now in yesterday's episode we actually spoke about the book industry food chain and we spoke about the process about every book goes through from author right through into the consumer. So to quickly just put it up here again as a point of reference, we've got 5 kind of entities in the food chain. We have authors, publishers, distributors, bookstores, and consumers. Now what I wanted to explain to you is where does the money actually go? Because if you can understand this whole process, it'll kind of help you in making decisions as to which way do you want to go. What is going to be your publishing model? Are you going to self-publish or are you going to go through a major publisher? That's a kind of a whole other conversation which we're going to talk about on another video, publishing versus self-publishing and going through the pros and cons of each. That's not really the purpose of this video, but just to go through now and explain where the money actually goes. Around about 10% actually goes to the author, typically. Okay, I'm going to go through and explain to you how it generally works. There are some variations or exceptions to this, which we'll kind of explain at the end, but just stick with me for a moment. Then, with regards to the publisher, the percentage that normally goes to them is about 25%. So already we've kind of lost about 35. So the consumer obviously pays full price. They pay 100% of whatever the book is, whether it's $19.95 or $24.95. We're going to call that 100%. So if 10%, if this book's $19.95, then basically $2 goes to the author, and that's normally paid to them as a royalty income from their publisher. That's if they go through a publisher, but if they self-publish, it works a little bit differently because again they're taking positions 1 and 2. But let me just continue this conversation. We've got 10% that goes to the author, about 25% that goes to the publisher, and then we have around about 15% that actually goes to the book distributor. Now, for most publishers are actually publisher distributors. They do both. So, therefore, they're making 40% of the recommended retail price. Okay, so about 40%. So, I'm just doing some quick maths. If it's basically a book sells for $20, then they're making around about $8 in this particular transaction, and you're getting paid $2 over here. And therefore, the bookshops normally take the other 50%. So here we have 10%, 40%, 50% added together. Then the consumer pays the 100%. So, sorry, I kind of got a little bit lost here with this one, so let me just draw this out. The 25%, here's the author, here's the publisher, here's the distributor, and this is the bookstore. So that's typically how it actually works. Now, the question that you've got to ask yourself is, how much of this pie do you want to walk away with? Okay, now there's a couple of different scenarios that we can look at, and again, this is only through bookstores, because if you're going to be in the market of selling books directly and there's ways to cut out some of these people in the middle, then the numbers totally change. Okay, we're going to have that conversation in a future episode, but right now let's stick with the traditional way of selling books, which is through bookstores. There are hundreds of other opportunities to sell books in different locations, but we're just going to talk about bookshops right here. So, do you want to just get 10%? So if you go through a publisher, you're going to generally get a 10% royalty. Now, if you're a first-time author, it can actually be as low as 7%, or if it's a book where there's going to be lots of costs involved from the publisher, it could even be 6% or 5%. But 7 is probably on the low side. If you're maybe a J.K. Rowling or a Stephen King or a Dan Brown, then you can probably maybe demand 12, 13, 14, maybe 15% of the recommended retail price, because just by putting your name on that book, the book's going to sell 500,000 or 1 million copies just because of your name. So therefore, you can probably demand a lot more. But the standard is normally about 10% of the recommended retail price. So if it sells for $20, we're talking about $2. If it sells for $30, we're talking about $3. And then here we've got that's if you go through a publisher. Then the publisher, so you get this this one here, the publisher will get this combined. Again, combined, that's about 40%, and the bookshop gets 50%. If you then want to self-publish, the numbers then change, because again, you're actually now getting access to the first two. Okay, you're getting the money from the author, and you're also getting the money that would normally go to the publisher, because why? You are now the publisher, hence why they call it a self-published author. So therefore, you're actually going to get, if you add those two together, 35% of the recommended retail price. 35%. Now, if you're, your book's selling for, say, $30, then you're going to get like $10 or maybe $9.50 or something along those lines. So do your numbers based on whatever you think your book can actually sell for. So now you may be really excited at that point saying, wow, $10, that's a whole lot better than $3. And yes, it is. But you've got to remember, out of that $10, you then need to take all your expenses. Because again, you're the publisher, so therefore you're the one that's paying for editing, proofreading, typesetting, graphic design for the front cover, and also paying for the printing, of course, and the warehousing and you know, where you're going to hold that stock and insurance and those type of expenses. So therefore, on your first print run, we're getting a little bit technical right now. Your gross income is going to be 35% of the recommended retail price. You might, for your first print run, only walk away with 10%, because even though you're making 35%, you're actually going to be spending 25% on cost to recoup all of that money that you've actually outlaid. So instead of making 35%, you've actually got 25% worth of expenses, therefore you're only making 10. So you may say, well, why would I want to self-publish? Because that's exactly the same then as going through a major publisher, because I'm getting 10% both ways. However, where it changes is twofold. The first is, after you do your first print run, all those costs of editing, proofreading, typesetting, graphic design have all been already covered. They've all been absorbed into the money that you haven't got paid the first time around. But because they're already done, the only cost that you then have is your printing costs. And if your printing costs are quite low, maybe $2 per book or $2.50, therefore the numbers then change the second time around. And then every future print run thereafter, you're actually going to be making 35%. But instead of your costs being 25, your costs are now going to be 10% approximately. So therefore, you're actually getting 25% profit if you're actually going to be self-publishing. And the second reason why you'd want to do it is because so therefore you're making more money per book sold in bookstores. But if you actually are then going to sell your book direct to consumers, then this whole thing changes, because you're then going to get a lot more of this pie other than your cost of printing, which may be $2 or $3. If your book's selling for $30 or even $20, you're still going to be getting somewhere between 80 to maybe even 90% profit. And if you went through a publisher, you would be actually, you'd have to buy your books back from your publisher, and they would not be giving them to you at cost price, that's for sure. You'd probably be buying the books at maybe a 50% or maybe a 60% discount. Now, again, I've gone through quite a lot of detail with you. Maybe I've bamboozled you with numbers, but now you can actually see the breakdown of where the money goes. And now you've got to ask yourself the question, well, which part of that pie do I want to pick up on? Do I only want to be an author and just get the 10%? Or do I maybe think that I have what it takes is to be a self-publisher, and therefore on each book sold in bookshops you're actually going to make more money? Now, don't just rely on these figures alone to make that decision, because there are actually a number of different factors. This is just one factor that you need to consider from monetary terms. There are a bunch of other reasons why you want to go with a publisher or why you don't want to go with a publisher. So please keep watching Get Published TV, because I'm going to have that conversation with you in the near future. So keep tuning in, because that's going to be a really important episode to help you make the best decision for you and your book. This is Dale Beaumont from Get Published TV. Thanks for watching. See you again next time.